Haemin had never touched a pool in his life but lied to his crush about loving swimming to get her number and somehow ended up in a race against the city gold medalist with the entire school watching. He had 1 week to prepare against someone who had been competing for years, and when he finally hit that water, every coach and veteran standing at that pool said the same thing, that his instincts were unlike anything they had ever seen before. A man with 52 years of swimming experience looked him in the eye and told him he was destined to become a god of swimming. However, before any of this, during class, Haemin starts to drift off and begins daydreaming about his swimming competition, imagining how he jumps into the pool right when the whistle blows. When he suddenly wakes up, he feels shocked and confused as he notices that the whole class is staring at him the entire time. The teacher becomes angry and asks if his lecture is so boring that Haemin has to fall asleep instead of listening. Haemin quickly explains that he falls asleep without meaning to and says sorry for it. However, the teacher replies that he is the one who should be sorry, since maybe he is not interesting enough for Haemin to pay attention. The teacher then says that all he wants is for Haemin to stay focused on the same topic as the rest of the class. Even after that, Haemin is still not paying attention and keeps wondering about what kind of dream he just saw. He then looks around the classroom and notices that one of the girls is shaking a lot. Haemin becomes quite curious and wonders if the girl is laughing or just shaking for no clear reason at all. However, when the girl turns around to face him, Haemin starts blushing because he thinks she looks extremely beautiful, while he feels that he himself looks like a monkey. The teacher then tells everyone to focus on the class, but one of the students even says that he feels sleepy. Haemin keeps looking outside the classroom window while thinking about different things. After the class ends, the teacher calls Haemin over because he was noticed for sleeping during the math lesson. The teacher tells him that he has already mentioned before that since Haemin is so big, whatever he does stands out the most. The teacher also says that he heard that Haemin even kicked the desk and tried to challenge the teacher's authority and then asks him to explain what really happened. Haemin tells the teacher that it was actually the math teacher who started the rumors himself and now he is blaming Haemin for it, and even the homeroom teacher seems to agree with him. After that, the homeroom teacher asks Haemin when he is going to submit his career plan, since everyone in the class except him and Yunseo has already turned theirs in. Before leaving, the teacher also asks him if he is completely sure that he is not interested in sports or applying for a physical education program. Haemin replies hesitantly that he is not interested because it just feels like too much work for him. While he is leaving the classroom, Haemin suddenly runs into the same girl from his class named Aina, and he starts acting a bit strange, thinking to himself that she smells really nice. Later during class, Haemin still keeps thinking about her scent and wonders whether it is coming from body lotion or shampoo. Suddenly, Ayane's friend walks up to Haemin and asks him if he is not going to play soccer. The girl then starts acting in a very cringy way and makes fun of him for even remembering Ayane's name. She then asks him if he has any cigarettes, but Haemin quickly refuses. Because of that, the girl says he actually looks like someone who smokes 2 packs a day. Haemin warns her back that if she smokes during school hours, she will eventually get caught, but she says she does not care at all. She explains that girls use a lot of perfume to hide the smell of smoke and even playfully asks if he wants to smell it himself. Before she leaves, Haemin curiously asks what kind of perfume she uses. After hearing this, the girl starts teasing him even more, repeatedly asking if he really likes the scent that much or if he actually has feelings for her. In the end, she jokingly asks if he liked Ayane's scent so much that he now wants to know more about her. Haemin immediately gets nervous and starts to panic, raising his voice as he says he does not know what she is talking about and that he has no idea if Aina even smelled like anything at all. The next day during lunch, Ayane's friend once again comes up to Haemin while he is sitting alone and eating. Haemin looks confused and slightly uncomfortable when he sees her again, and she casually says that if she sits there, then everyone else can sit together too, clearly hinting that Aina will be joining them as well. Just then, Aina and the other girls arrive at the table, and Haemin quickly stands up in a hurry, saying that he is already full and that they can eat as much as they want. However, before he can leave, Ayane's friend suddenly steps on his foot under the table, making him flinch in pain and forcing him to sit back down in his seat again. Aina then comes and sits a bit closer to him, and the girls start talking among themselves, which makes the whole situation feel awkward and uncomfortable for Haemin as he does not really know where to look. Ayane's friend then purposely asks Aina if she has any celebrity crushes or if she has a specific type she likes. Aina says that she does not really have anything in mind to talk about, but her friend keeps pushing her and tells her to just say anything at all. After a short moment, Aina finally admits that she has a crush on someone named Leon Marceau, a foreign guy that no one at school really seems to know about. Ayane's friend then lightly hits Haemin, trying to pull him into the conversation so he does not just sit there quietly and ignore everything. She then asks Haemin if he has ever heard that name before, and when he does not reply right away, she hits his leg again, which makes him jump in surprise and feel awkward. Seeing his reaction, Aina starts to think that he might actually know who that person is, and she becomes more excited. She leans a bit closer to him and acts more friendly and touchy while saying that he is the first person she has met at school who knows about him. After that, Aina asks Haemin if he really likes swimming, and in that moment Haemin starts thinking to himself that he might actually have to start swimming again, even though he always believed that he would never need to do any kind of sports for the rest of his life. At that moment, Haemin quickly tells her that he likes swimming without thinking too much. It turns out that he is actually lying, because his dad always told him to be the kind of person who does the right thing even without rules, but today he goes against his own conscience. Just because he tells her that he likes swimming, he ends up getting Ina's contact details, something he has wanted for a long time. Haemin thinks that he somehow manages to exchange numbers with Ina mostly because of her friend's actions, but things do not stop there, as he is now texting Ina as well. While texting, Haemin starts blushing a lot because he realizes that he is messaging Ina late at night, around 11, and he feels both nervous and excited at the same time. Haemin lies on his bed and starts wondering if Ina is also in her pajamas, lying in bed and texting like he is, or if she is sitting at her desk studying and replying in between. He overthinks every little thing and feels awkward about what to say next. Even though he really likes her and wants to get closer to her, Haemin still acts like a loser and keeps sending short, cold replies to his crush on text messages instead of saying what he truly feels. The following morning, Haemin walks through the corridor while thinking that he feels a little closer to Ina than before after everything that happened. As he keeps walking, he suddenly sees Ina coming toward him with her friend, and after hesitating for a moment, he finally gathers enough courage to say hello to her. However, Ina and her friend notice that he is shaking a lot and start wondering why he is acting like that, thinking that maybe he is not feeling well or is nervous for some reason. Later in class, the teacher informs everyone that since it is now the spring season, there is one important thing they all need to decide by the end of the week, and that is choosing their club. He explains that their school currently has around 30 official clubs, and there might even be new ones created this time, so they all need to check out different clubs by Wednesday and choose carefully. Before leaving the classroom, the homeroom teacher calls out both Ina and Haemin and tells them to come to the counseling room. As they are about to go, Ina's friend asks Haemin if he has any club in mind that he wants to join, but Haemin replies that he has not really thought about it yet. Ina's friend then keeps staring at him for a moment before saying that she is sure he is going to join the swim club since he is good at swimming. Hearing that, Haemin suddenly realizes that just because of his lie, everyone now believes that he is actually good at swimming. He then starts thinking that if he does not fix this situation right now, it might seriously cause problems for him in the future. At the same time, in the counseling room, the homeroom teacher tells Ina that he has looked into the request she made earlier and explains that it is not going to be easy. Ina becomes curious after hearing that and asks him to explain more about the situation. The coach explains that this is because their school does not have a pool, and having a swim team that cannot even swim would not make any sense at all. Ina then suggests that they could either build a pool at the school or use a public pool nearby for their club activities. The teacher tells her that he will try to look into other possible options for now, while she should focus on finding at least 6 members so the club can officially start. Finally, the day for club exploration arrives, and every club is crowded with many students showing interest, except for the swim club, which is completely empty with no one around. Since there are 0 applicants, Ina starts to wonder why not even a single person is interested in swimming and thinks that maybe she should have promoted the club more properly. Ina's friend then says that it was obvious from the start that number 17-year-old wants to swim these days and that Ina should have just joined her club instead. However, Ina still believes that some people will definitely join them and keeps hoping that things will work out. Suddenly, 2 girls enter the room and ask if this is the Water Knows the Answer club, but when Ina tells them that it is actually the swim club, they quickly turn around and run away. Later, Ina's friend comes in and asks if even a single person has joined the club, and Ina sadly says that no one is interested at all. After that, her friend says she is feeling sleepy and is going out for a walk, then leaves the room. She goes outside the school to smoke and, while standing there, notices Haemin by the side of the road. It turns out that Haemin is deep in thought, worrying about how he cannot keep lying to Ina forever and that he needs to do something about it soon. Just then, he hears Ina calling out loudly for Yoon, who is her friend. Yoon quickly hides behind a nearby pole, trying not to be seen, while Ina ends up finding Haemin instead. She then asks him if he has seen Yoon around because she suddenly disappeared earlier. At that moment, both Haemin and Ina say each other's names at the same time, since they both have something they want to say, which makes the whole situation even more awkward. Aina speaks first and asks him if he has picked a club yet, and he replies that he is just planning to join a quiet one. He then asks Aina about her choice, and she looks a bit nervous before saying that she is trying to start a swim club. She also admits that she has not recruited a single member yet, but she is still determined to make it official because she wants to show more people how great swimming really is. Hearing this, Haemin feels impressed as he realizes that she truly likes swimming. Haemin then hesitates, feeling like he should tell her something important, but he just cannot gather the courage to say it out loud. Aina notices and says that it looked like he wanted to say something too, but Haemin quickly denies it and says it is nothing. Later that night, Haemin keeps thinking about whether he really wants to continue living with a lie, and after thinking for a while, he decides that he will tell her the truth through a text message instead. He picks up his phone and tries to type the message, but he cannot bring himself to send anything. Just then, Haemin receives a message from Aina asking if he wants to join the swim club with her, and in the end, he ends up accepting her offer. Aina further says that she wants to show more people how great swimming really is and why it matters to her. As she speaks, Haemin cannot stop himself from staring at her, thinking that her eyes are the most beautiful thing about her, and he is still unsure if what he feels is love or just something else he cannot understand yet. While quietly looking at her, Haemin remembers a sports player and then asks her again if she really likes swimming that much. Aina replies that she absolutely loves swimming without any doubt, and after that, both of them continue to look at each other for a moment, making the air feel a bit tense and awkward. Ayane's friend, who is watching everything from a distance, finds the whole situation amusing and thinks that it is actually fun to watch them like this. Meanwhile, Yoon starts thinking back to the beginning of the semester, sitting in her class feeling completely bored. She wonders if there is anything interesting she can do, since she is not interested in studying, dating, or even picking up any hobbies at all. One day while sitting in class and staring blankly out of the classroom window, she notices a young couple outside sharing a kiss, and that one small moment ends up becoming the starting point of a brand new hobby for her. From that day forward, Yoon throws herself into consuming every single romantic comedy she can possibly get her hands on, whether it is anime, comics, or dramas, and she ends up spending a huge chunk of her free time going through all of them one by one. However, when she starts comparing all of those stories and relationships she watches on screen to what real life actually looks like, she feels deeply let down and comes to the conclusion that they are nothing more than cheap imitations of real emotions and nowhere near as exciting or satisfying as she had originally expected them to be. Yoon then comes to a realization and thinks that instead of putting herself through the trouble of experiencing any of it firsthand, what she really wants is to sit back and watch someone she actually knows fall in love right in front of her, so that she can feel that same thrilling rush of excitement and joy from the outside without ever having to take any of the risk herself. Yoon's friend then turns the question around on her and asks her why she does not just try dating someone herself instead of playing matchmaker for everyone else, but Yoon shuts that idea down immediately and because she strongly dislikes men and wants absolutely nothing to do with them on a romantic level. She also makes it very clear that she does not actually want love or a real relationship at all, and the only thing she is genuinely looking for is that quick rush of excitement and thrill, like the feeling you get when dopamine hits your brain all at once. She keeps going and goes deeper into expressing just how much she is completely against the whole idea of dating by pointing out that it comes with way too much risk and uncertainty involved, and even if things feel happy and exciting and full of butterflies at the very beginning stages, that warm feeling never actually sticks around for long and ends up fading away pretty fast. And what started out as something good eventually turns into anxiety, avoidance, and even betrayal somewhere down the line when things fall apart. Yoon also mentions that she is not afraid to force herself to change for someone else, and she is the kind of person who thinks putting humans too close together is how wars start. Now, she wants the people who believe in love go ahead and do that stuff and she just wants to sit next to them. Back in present, she thinks that what she wants is happening right in front of her in the form of Aina and Haemin. She then starts to feel all lovey-dovey thinking that this is the moment that she was waiting for all her life. However, she quickly catches herself and thinks that she cannot let her guard down just yet, since nothing has actually happened between them so far. She also thinks that knowing these two the way she does, even if someone physically locked them in a room together, nothing would ever happen between them anyway. Yoon then gets a call from the guy, and the first thing she does is ask him where he is at that moment. He casually tells her that he is over at the pool right now. Yoon then asks him whether he has gone ahead and joined the swim club yet, and he replies that he is actually in the foodie club instead of the swim club. Yoon does not hesitate and straight up tells him that he needs to quit that club and join the swim club, and the guy is genuinely caught off guard and surprised to even find out that their school has a swim club in the first place, since he had no idea it existed. Yoon then goes on to explain to him that their swim club is not just some casual laid-back group that messes around, since one of its actual members is training seriously and putting in real work with the genuine goal of going pro someday. The very next day, the same boy that Yoon had been talking to on the phone shows up at school, and his arrival immediately gets everyone around him gossiping. Aina spots him as well and remembers that she had just been talking about him with Yoon, but instead of stopping to say hi to her, the boy rudely bumps into her and keeps walking like nothing happened. He walks straight over to Haemin's desk, where Haemin is still slumped over, lost in a sleepy daydream about INA's factories. The boy slams his hand down on the desk hard enough to snap Haemin out of it, and once Haemin opens his eyes, the boy gets straight to the point and asks if he is Haemin. It turns out that Yoon's friend is none other than Sehyeon Kang, who then follows up by asking Haemin what his 50-meter freestyle time is. Haemin has no idea what Sehyeon is talking about, so Sehyeon suggests that the two of them should just find out for themselves. In a flashback, Sehyeon is taking part in a swimming competition. As the whistle blows, his opponent dives into the water right away, while Sehyeon struggles for a moment because his goggles are already cracked. Even with the broken goggles, he still jumps into the water and starts swimming, quickly catching up and then passing his opponent. In what feels like a blink of an eye, the race ends, and when the opponent looks toward the finish line, he sees that Sehyeon is already there ahead of him. The other swimmer feels confused and thinks about how he improved his stroke, fixed his starting posture, and even beat his personal best recently, while Sehyeon was out for almost a month due to an injury, so he cannot understand how Sehyeon is still this fast. Back in the present, the whole class looks toward Haemin, and they all feel that the situation has become tense. Just then, Yoon and Aina also arrive, looking confused and wondering what Sehyeon is doing there when she clearly told him to join the club earlier. Haemin straight up tells Sehyeon that he has zero interest in any of that and questions why he should even bother racing against him in the first place. Upon hearing that response, Sehyeon quickly realizes that Haemin is the type of person who needs a solid reason before he is willing to go up against anyone. So Sehyeon shifts his attention over to the girls nearby and walks straight towards Aina, asking her directly whether she is the one who runs the swim club. He then tells her that if he ends up losing to Haemin in a race, he will go ahead and join her swim club as a member, but Aina looks genuinely confused and asks him why he is coming to her with all of this information instead of directing it towards someone else. Sehyeon then starts acting noticeably strange and out of nowhere completely abandons the subject he just brought up and switches the topic entirely by casually dropping the fact that he happened to be last year's city gold medalist in freestyle swimming, throwing it out there like that single piece of information is supposed to surprise everyone. Aina cannot help but look genuinely impressed after hearing something like that coming from him, and she slowly turns her head in Haemin's direction. To Haemin's surprise, practically everyone in the entire classroom starts chiming in and telling him to take the challenge, and Haemin just looks annoyed by the whole situation, thinking to himself that the entire thing is completely lame and not worth his time. Sehyeon then picks up on the fact that Haemin might actually have some kind of feelings for Aina, so he deliberately moves closer to her on purpose and makes up an excuse by telling her that she has lint stuck in her hair, and he even goes as far as asking her whether she has a boyfriend or not. At that exact moment, Haemin completely loses his patience and reaches out and grabs Sehyeon by the arm, telling him flat out that he is going to accept his challenge and that they should just go ahead and race and get it over with. Sehyeon then asks him which specific event they should race in, and Haemin tells him straight up that he is perfectly fine with doing whatever event Sehyeon happens to be best at, making it clear that he is not intimidated in the slightest. The two of them then come to an agreement and decide to go ahead and do the 50-meter freestyle race later that same day, but before things can move any further, Yoon suddenly steps in and tells both of them to stop right where they are. Hearing that, everyone in the classroom slowly turns to look at Yoon, wondering why she is the one stepping in and refusing to let this happen. Yoon thinks to herself that Sehyeon is ridiculously talented at swimming, and on top of that she genuinely has no real idea just how good Haemin actually is when it comes to the water either. She also thinks that the odds of Haemin actually coming out on top and beating Sehyeon are not looking great at all from where she is standing, and if Haemin ends up losing the race, then her entire carefully thought out dating sim plan and the dopamine rush she has been looking forward to are both completely finished and done before they even get the chance to properly start. So Yoon quickly decides to come up with a fake story on the spot and jumps in by announcing out loud to everyone that Haemin is currently in the middle of recovering from an injury, banking on the idea that Sehyeon would not want to go ahead and race someone who is already dealing with being hurt. Sehyeon immediately narrows his eyes and asks her where exactly this injury is supposed to be located, and without even taking a second to hesitate she fires back and tells him that it is a fracture sitting right in his right big toe. Saihyun takes a moment to actually think it over and eventually comes to the conclusion that he really cannot in good conscience go ahead and race someone who is already dealing with an injury, so he turns around and asks how long exactly it is going to take before Haemin is fully healed up and recovered. Saihyun then makes his position very clear by telling them that he is willing to give Haemin a full 2 weeks to get himself back together and recover properly, but he also makes it absolutely clear at the same time that he is not the type of person who is going to sit around and wait any longer than that no matter what. Yoon then quickly shuffles behind Haemin and uses him as a shield while boldly and confidently declaring to Saihyun that in 2 weeks' time Haemin is going to come to that pool and completely wipe the floor with him in front of everyone. On top of that, she throws in that Haemin is going to show him exactly what real swimming is supposed to look like when someone who means business gets in the water. Before Saihyun could leave, Ina tells him to fill the swim club registration form since the race is just 2 weeks. The very next day, Ina tracks down another one of her friends named Yunseo and practically begs her to go ahead and sign the registration form for her swim club. Yunseo makes it pretty clear from the start that she is not the least bit interested and shuts her down right away without even taking a moment to think about it, telling her flat out that she has absolutely no interest in joining any swimming club. Yunseo also gets noticeably frustrated with her on top of that because she tells Ina that there is no way she can bring herself to wear a swimsuit, but Ina quickly jumps in and tells her not to stress about that at all since she happens to have a wide and beautiful selection of swimsuits already picked out and ready specifically with Yunseo in mind. Hearing that, Yunseo is genuinely caught off guard and surprised that Ina went that far, but even after all of that she still stands her ground and tells Ina to go find someone else who might actually be interested in joining instead. Right at that moment, Yoon happens to show up out of nowhere and casually asks Ina whether she should step in and give her a hand with all of this. The second Ina hears that, she takes off running straight toward Yoon and grabs her and asks her with wide eyes whether she is being serious and truly willing to do that for her. Yoon then asks her to confirm whether she only needs 6 people total by the end of today, and then points out that with both Haemin and Saihyun already counted, that means Ina only needs to find 3 more people to complete the club. She then says that if she joins, that will leave only 2 spots left, but Ina quickly asks her if she is really going to leave her own club just to join them instead. Ina starts getting emotional, thinking that her friend is giving up a fun club just for her, but she does not realize that she herself is actually the reason Yoon finds all of this fun. Yoon then says that what they need right now is just the head count, and she can help with that, but Ina suddenly freaks out and says that it would be better if the members were actually good at swimming. Ina then starts acting a bit awkward and keeps repeating that even if they can only swim a little, or even if they can just float, that would still be fine for the club as well. In the end, she says that as long as they are willing to try swimming, that is already more than enough for her. Sometime later, Yoon brings a complete otaku from her class and makes him sign up for the swim club. However, Ina turns to him seriously and asks him directly if he even knew anything about the club before coming and whether he actually likes swimming at all. The guy is surprised to find out that it is a swimming club of all things, and when Yoon gets furious, he quickly recovers and says that he absolutely loves swimming and has always loved it. With that settled, Ina thinks to herself that they are now down to needing just one single more person to complete the club. Right at that exact moment, Saihyun walks in with a girl beside him and announces that he went ahead and found one, and Yoon immediately narrows her eyes at him and asks him straight up whether he did anything weird or suspicious to get her to come along with him. Saihyun fires back and says that the girl agreed to do it completely on her own and that she said she would join herself, even though the girl standing next to him is blushing so intensely that her entire face has gone red. Finally, all 6 people go ahead and get themselves registered into Ina's club, and the moment that happens, Ina heads straight over to the homeroom teacher to deliver the news and make it official. The homeroom teacher looks over everything and thinks to himself that not only did they manage to pull together the right number of people, but the goals they have laid out are actually surprisingly solid. Ina's club ends up consisting of a delinquent, a class representative, someone who does nothing but sleep in class, and an honor student all under one roof together. The teacher then lets them know that they are allowed to go ahead and create this club, but also makes it clear that it is not considered an official club just yet and still has a ways to go before it gets there. He explains that there are still a few things they need to sort out as there's no pool on campus, and they are all first years. The teacher also says that even if they use a public pool off campus, then there are safety issues, and they will need permission from the facility. He suggests that they all should join another club, and participates in their activities and just until the paperwork and approval process for the swimming is done. Hearing that, everyone gets sad and the teacher says that if they agree, he is going to assign all of them to a temporary club, which is something suitable. The teacher then assigns Saihyun and Changsik to the British Drama Club, Ina and Saihyun to the Bakery Club, and Haemin and the new girl to the Reading Club. After the meeting, Haemin gets furious at Saihyun for talking so casually with Aina and says that in 2 weeks he is going to beat him. When Haemin furiously storms off and leaves, Yun turns to her nerdy friend and explains that since he has never dated anyone before in his life, he would not be able to understand that no guy ever wants to look bad or lose in front of the girl that he actually has feelings for. Later that same day, Haemin shows up to a nearby public pool area wearing a completely terrible and inappropriate swimming suit that is nowhere close to what someone should be wearing in a public pool. The lifeguard on duty immediately gets furious the moment he lays eyes on him and confronts him about not wearing proper swimwear like he is supposed to. A friendly guy named Honky happens to be around and steps in, deciding on his own to let Haemin borrow his swimsuit for the time being so that he can actually get in the water without causing more of a scene. The lifeguard thinks to himself that Honky is being way too generous and kind toward a complete stranger he just met, but Honky brushes it off and says that it would be really something special to watch once Haemin actually learns how to swim properly. Shortly after, Haemin looks down at the swimsuit he has been handed and thinks to himself that the thing looks like nothing more than a worn-out and stretched bikini that has seen better days. After reluctantly putting the suit on anyway, Haemin launches himself into the pool like an absolute maniac in a way that immediately sends the old people nearby into a fury, and they start shouting at him that he absolutely cannot behave like that at a public pool where other people are present. The lifeguard then makes the decision to step back and leave Haemin entirely in the hands of the old ladies, thinking to himself that only the fittest is going to survive what is about to happen next. Afterwards, we get introduced to the Goyang Sports Center, which turns out to be a massive and impressive sports complex that was built using a huge budget provided by Goyang City with the specific purpose of improving public health and encouraging people to get into recreational sports. The place is fully equipped with just about everything anyone could ask for, ranging all the way from a soccer field to a basketball court and plenty more in between. Switching back over to the public pool, Haemin finds himself once again on the receiving end of a scolding from the old ladies who are furious and tell him flat out that he cannot just go around behaving however he wants at a public pool where other people are trying to enjoy themselves. The ladies raise their voices at him and make it very clear that he needs to start following basic pool etiquette like everyone else, and Haemin stands there with a blank look on his face having absolutely no idea what they are even referring to. One of the ladies then gets right in his face and asks him whether he did not see the no diving sign that is clearly posted, because if he keeps going ahead and doing what he is doing then someone is eventually going to end up seriously hurt since diving is simply not allowed in that area. Haemin genuinely feels bad and apologizes right away, admitting that it was really careless of him to do that, but just as he is saying all of this he suddenly notices another person nearby pulling off completely flawless and effortless jumps into the pool without anyone saying a single word about it. Following that, more and more people begin diving into the pool one after another, and Haemin turns to look at the old women with a completely confused and lost expression on his face, unable to understand why those people are allowed to do it but he was not. One of the women then raises her voice and explains to him that those people are not there for free swimming at all and have most likely paid to rent out that specific section of the pool for themselves, and the only reason they came at him the way they did was because he went ahead and broke the rules that apply specifically to the free swimming section where he was. One of the old men nearby then steps in and tells the grandma to calm herself down a little bit, and he points out that Haemin has got that classic rebellious and defiant look in his eyes that makes it pretty obvious he is standing there internally questioning why they are all yelling at him over something like this. The old man then lays out a simple deal. He tells Haemin that if he can beat him in the water, the one and only so-called poison jellyfish of Sangmin, then he will never bother him about anything again. After that, Haemin can do whatever he wants at the pool, whether it is diving, skipping stones across the surface, or anything else he feels like doing. It soon becomes clear that this old man is no joke. He carries 52 years of swimming experience under his belt and is even ranked at an advanced level, with an incredibly impressive 1,500-meter freestyle record to his name. Haemin thinks to himself that he was not even planning on diving again in the first place, but standing here right now this whole situation feels like a genuinely good opportunity for him to put his swimming skills to the test and see where he actually stands. The old man then looks at Haemin and tells him that this must be his very first time getting in the water to swim properly, and he asks him whether he wants to hear a piece of advice before the two of them get started. He tells Haemin to keep his body loose and relaxed while he is swimming and not to tense up, but once the race actually gets going, Haemin thinks to himself that there is absolutely no way he can stay relaxed with everything happening around him, while the girls watching from the side of the pool look on and assume that he must be feeling strong and completely confident about the whole thing. The old ladies sitting nearby then notice that the old man they like to call the jellyfish has not even properly gotten started yet and is still taking his time, and they think to themselves that if Haemin is truly as much of a beginner as he appears to be, then the jellyfish is absolutely going to come out on top and win this thing no matter what goes down in that pool. The old man himself then comes to the realization that Haemin went ahead and chose not to take his advice seriously, which in his mind means that Haemin is going to end up regretting that decision very soon and will have no choice but to learn his lesson the hard way. However, on Haemin's end, he is not thinking about any of that and instead tells himself that even though it is only a 50-meter lane they are dealing with, it does not matter one bit who he happens to be competing against, because he always throws everything he has into whatever he is doing and holds absolutely nothing back, and as far as he is concerned that is the only strategy he has ever needed. But just as the race is underway and he is pushing himself through the water, he glances over to the side and is completely shocked to find that the old man is already so far ahead of him that he has been left entirely in the dust without even realizing it was happening. At that moment, Haemin's mind plays a trick on him and what he sees in front of him no longer looks like an old man at all, but instead looks like a massive jellyfish gracefully riding along the currents of the water without any effort whatsoever. Haemin pushes himself and tries his absolute best to speed up, all while thinking to himself about when exactly the old man managed to get so far ahead of him so quickly without him even noticing. Haemin gives everything he has and tries to swim as fast as his body will physically allow him to, but no matter how much effort he puts in and no matter how hard he pushes, he simply cannot close the gap and catch up to the old man ahead of him. The old man meanwhile is thinking to himself that flailing both arms around as fast as possible is not what actually makes someone a good swimmer, and that swimming is a sport that takes place in the water and requires a completely different kind of understanding than most people realize. He also thinks that if Haemin cannot grasp that concept and truly feel the water around him the way a real swimmer does, he is never going to be able to beat him no matter how much raw energy he throws into it. The old ladies watching from the side think to themselves that this outcome was entirely expected from the old jellyfish, because even though he looks slow and unhurried from the outside, he is cutting straight through the water like it is nothing at all. Even the lifeguard standing nearby thinks to himself that this whole thing is already over, because at the end of the day this is a matchup between someone who has been properly trained for years and someone who has never seriously swum a day in their life, which makes the two of them not even worth comparing to each other. The coach further thinks that even if he's way up there in age, the old jellyfish swims 30 laps non-stop during free swimming. On the other hand, Haemin should be hitting his limit by now. Turns out, Haemin can now feel that his heart feels heavy and it feels like there's a black hole inside his chest, so he wonders if swimming always this exhausting. Haemin pushes forward and continues through the swimming race, but things start getting rough as his vision begins turning wavy and distorted around him. He thinks to himself that he has been taking breaths at a regular pace this whole time, so it feels unusual and strange for him to suddenly be gasping for air the way he is right now. Slowly, Haemin starts sinking deeper into the water as if he is completely losing himself and has no control over what his body is doing anymore. He starts wondering whether he should just stop for a brief moment and at least give himself enough time to recover some of his energy so that he can actually make it to the finish line in one piece rather than falling apart before he gets there. He thinks that maybe he should pull himself out of the water for just a second and take a look at how much distance is left so that he can get a clearer sense of exactly how far he still has to go. But then out of nowhere, a memory suddenly flashes through Haemin's mind of someone mocking him and telling him with complete certainty that this is where his limit ends and there is nothing left for him to give. That memory hits him hard and the moment it does, something inside Haemin completely switches and he gets fully charged up with a burst of energy and throws himself forward through the water as fast as his body will possibly allow him to go. He manages to blast forward using every last drop of strength he has left in him, pushing through what felt impossible just seconds ago. Seeing that, everyone watching including the old grannies are completely caught off guard, and they all come to the realization that what Haemin just pulled off is the butterfly stroke. After that, Haemin pushes himself to keep moving forward through the water even though he is rapidly running out of oxygen and desperately needs to take a deep breath to keep going. In order to get that breath he so badly needs, he plunges himself down deep into the water and then immediately bursts back up to the surface in one sharp motion. The old grannies watching from the side think to themselves that what they are seeing right now is completely impossible for someone who only just started learning how to swim not long ago. However, Haemin keeps right on going and continues to blow everyone away by repeatedly diving in and out of the water in a way that nobody there expected from him at all. Haemin thinks to himself that now that he has managed to get all the oxygen back into his lungs, he is going to go ahead and push forward with absolutely full power and give everything he has left all the way to the very end without holding anything back. Every single muscle in Haemin's body is visibly popping under the pressure, and he thinks to himself that at this point he does not even feel like a human being anymore but rather like a machine that has been programmed with one single mission that it has no choice but to complete no matter what. Haemin then starts kicking his legs faster and harder with even more explosive power behind each movement, and within an instant he is cutting through the water at a speed that makes him look like an actual Marvel superhero flying through the air. On the other side of things, a guy nearby is in the middle of teaching a group of beginners the absolute basics of swimming, telling them that when they first enter the water they need to make sure to point their toes properly before anything else. However, when they turn around, they are surprised to see water bursting wildly inside the pool, and they start wondering if a pipe has suddenly burst somewhere. One of the girls quickly says that there is no pipe explosion and that it is actually a person causing all that water to splash so hard. In the meantime, Haemin begins to wonder what kind of feeling he is experiencing, as he can clearly feel his speed, and to him it feels like he is riding along with the current itself. He then thinks that this might be what the old grandpa was trying to explain to him earlier. Soon, he is able to see the jellyfish grandpa ahead of him and decides that he is going to pass him no matter what happens. However, the grandpa keeps swimming and starts to wonder if Haemin is really keeping up with him, thinking that for a beginner, even 50 meters might be too much. Suddenly, the grandpa notices a huge wave of water rushing toward him, which scares him. He becomes confused and wonders why something like a massive tsunami is suddenly coming his way out of nowhere, and on top of that rushing water, he even thinks he can see a turtle moving toward him. He wonders if the turtle is riding the wave just like that. After that, Haemin quickly rushes forward towards the old geezer, and when he sees that he quickly lifts up his pace. The grannies and the lifeguards standing nearby are also left completely surprised and at a loss for words by what they are witnessing unfold in front of them. They think to themselves that Haemin is putting out such an incredible and unbelievable amount of power, and that he has almost completely closed the gap between himself and the old jellyfish, and even as they are watching it happen right in front of their eyes they still cannot bring themselves to fully believe that they are standing there watching an absolute beginner come this close to matching a living legend in the water. With the finish line now so close that anyone could reach out and almost touch it, they think to themselves that Haemin is moving at an insane speed while the old man on the other hand appears to have completely stalled and stopped making any real progress forward. Suddenly, Haemin dives completely under the water with only 5 meters standing between him and the finish line, and the coach watching from the side cannot believe what he is seeing and thinks to himself about what kind of technique Haemin is even trying to pull off at this particular moment in the race. The old man then also dives down beneath the surface shortly after, and from that point on nobody standing up above on the surface can see either one of them anymore. Time goes by, Haemin finally bursts back through the surface of the water, and when he does everyone sees that he is holding onto the old man who looks completely limp and lifeless, appearing as though he has just drowned right there in the pool. Haemin wastes absolutely no time and immediately shouts at the lifeguard and the old grannies to call emergency services and get help there as fast as possible. After that, everyone rushes over and crowds around the old man out of genuine worry and concern, and they repeatedly call out to him and ask him over and over again whether he can hear them and whether he is still with them. After a few terrifying moments, the old man manages to let out a response and utters the name of a turtle, which completely catches everyone standing around him off guard and surprises them all. The old man then slowly reaches out and wraps his hand around Haemin's and tells him in a weak but serious voice that he absolutely has to swim and dedicate himself to it, because he can see real talent living inside of him that most people simply do not have. He also thinks to himself that it is far too great and rare of a talent to just let go to waste, and that Haemin owes it to himself to use it to its absolute fullest potential. The old man then goes on to tell Haemin that he should not even try to fight against his own fate, because as far as the old man is concerned, Haemin is destined to become nothing less than a god of swimming. The next day, Haemin gets himself ready for school while his mind keeps drifting back to the fact that both the old man and Ina ended up saying pretty much the exact same thing to him. He thinks about how Ina genuinely believes that he might actually be good at swimming, and his mind also goes back to the moment when he went ahead and accepted Saihyun's challenge without backing down. Once he arrives at school, Yoon spots him and walks over and asks him why he is showing up so early today of all days, and Haemin just shrugs it off and tells her that he simply woke up early this morning. Yoon does not buy that and tells him to drop the act and just be straight with her and tell her what his freestyle time actually is. Haemin looks back at her, so Yoon goes ahead and breaks it down for him by explaining that she wants to get a clear picture of where both he and Saihyun stand against each other in the water, so that she can figure out who she is actually going to put her bet on when the time comes. Yoon works through it in her head and comes to the conclusion that he is probably not a complete newcomer to swimming, and that if he was confident enough to stand there and accept Saihyun's challenge the way he did, then he must have at least some solid skill behind him. At that exact moment, Haemin's face shifts into an expression that makes him look like someone who just got caught doing something he was not supposed to be doing. But before anything else can come of it, Yunseo suddenly shows up and asks the two of them what exactly they are standing there talking about. Haemin tells Yunseo that they were just talking about his swimming. Yoon then turns to Yunseo and asks her why she ended up waking up so early today, and Yunseo sighs and explains that she was up the entire night because she got into a fight with her boyfriend, going on to say that the two of them were doing a general knowledge quiz together and she got a few answers wrong and he simply would not let it go no matter what. Yoon does not waste a single second and immediately tries to pour more fuel onto the fire by telling Yunseo that no boyfriend has any right whatsoever to look down on his girlfriend the way he did over something like that. She also goes a step further and suggests that Yunseo should seriously consider dumping him altogether because the way he acted is a pretty big red flag that she should not be ignoring. Not long after that, another person walks over and joins the group, and from that point on the whole conversation turns into a full-on men-bashing session that everyone except Haemin seems to be thoroughly enjoying. When Ina finally shows up and sees that everyone is already there so early in the morning, she gets genuinely excited and asks the group what they are all talking about so enthusiastically. Yoon starts to say that she was in the middle of a conversation with Haemin about something, but then she suddenly stops herself and turns it around by telling Haemin to go ahead and continue explaining it himself. Haemin, however, stands there with a completely blank look on his face and has absolutely no idea what Yoon is even trying to get him to say or where she is going with any of it. The moment all the girls hear that, their curiosity immediately gets the better of them and they all turn and fix their eyes directly on Haemin, and at that point he has absolutely no choice but to stand there and give them some kind of answer. Haemin goes ahead and says straight away that his swimming is decent, but that one single problematic word that Haemin throws out there to dodge the question is ultimately going to be what comes back around and ruins him. It is the kind of phrase that gives the other person just enough room to fill in the blanks and speculate on their own, while at the same time covering such a wide and broad range of possible answers that nobody can really pin anything down, and on top of that it keeps the whole conversation moving along smoothly. However, the reasons why people tend to reach for the word decent can vary quite a bit, whether it is because they are simply too lazy to give a real answer or because their personal standards are just set at a completely different level than everyone else around them, but the real reason behind it goes a lot deeper than either of those. As it turns out, the word decent tends to come out when someone keeps digging and prying into something that the other person is desperately trying to keep hidden, and that is exactly when people duck behind that word like it is a curtain that will protect them from being fully exposed. It is also the go-to word that regular everyday people reach for when they want to cover up and hide the fact that they do not actually have the skills they are quietly hoping nobody will ask too many questions about. Not only that, they start thinking that it is also the kind of move real experts use, pretending to be average, like when a drunk person says they only drink a normal amount even though their limit is actually 38 shots. In short, Haemin's simple answer spreads through the imagination of these bored high school girls and slowly turns into a completely different and exaggerated story. Later during class, the principal, along with a police officer and the old jellyfish grandpa, arrives and asks if there is a student named Haemin present. They then decide to give an award to Haemin, saying that he saved an old man from drowning, and they even claim that he swam through waves over 10 meters high to rescue him. Soon, everyone in the class starts talking about Haemin and how talented he is at swimming, even though he is just standing there confused and has no idea what is actually going on. After the class ends, Haemin walks outside and notices large banners at the school gate announcing the first annual swimming competition. However, the thing that surprises him even more is seeing that people are actually putting real photos of him on those posters and even comparing him to Saihyun. Soon, the people around notice Haemin standing there, and they tell him to go and get his own merch, which only makes him feel even more furious as he wonders where all of this is suddenly coming from. Haemin then looks to the other side and notices Yoon along with her teammates who are busy making all of this merch related to him. The guy tells Yoon that he feels like making 10 of these for every single one she completes, and he adds that they need to hurry because everyone is going to start arriving soon. Before Yoon can say anything in response, she suddenly notices Haemin staring directly at them, and the two of them end up looking at each other silently for a few seconds. After that, Yoon casually puts a sticker onto his face and then goes back to carrying those boxes filled with merch to another place. Haemin, who is now completely furious at what they are doing, immediately starts chasing after them while demanding to know why they are doing all of this to him. Later on during regular school hours, Haemin finds himself being encouraged and cheered on by his class teachers one after another as they each take turns wishing him the best of luck for his upcoming swimming match against Saihyun. The very first period teacher gets genuinely excited about the whole thing and wishes him well before turning to the rest of the class and asking everyone whether they had a chance to see the banners that were put up outside, gushing about how incredibly cool they look. Then during second period, Haemin's ethics teacher stands there barely able to wrap his head around the fact that Haemin of all people actually turned out to be a professional level swimmer, admitting openly that since Haemin is always face down and completely knocked out on his desk during class, he had honestly written him off and assumed he was never going to amount to much of anything. Hearing all of that piling up on him one class after another, Haemin is already at his absolute limit with frustration and starts wondering to himself what kind of embarrassing and out of control school he is even attending. He thinks to himself that they cannot just go around slapping banners up everywhere and throwing together some big event like this out of nowhere, especially since something like this is not even supposed to be allowed in the first place. He also cannot understand why not a single person in any position of authority is stepping in and putting a stop to any of it, given that this is supposed to be a proper public institution with rules and standards to uphold. Right at that moment, one of the older men from the school comes storming in with a furious look on his face and declares loudly that this is absolutely not the way a school is supposed to conduct itself, and for the first time all day Haemin feels a genuine wave of relief wash over him and thinks that finally someone with some sense has shown up. Before he could do something, the old man takes off his jacket and reveals that he is also Haemin fan, saying today everyone should be going to practice cheering together for Haemin. He also points out that school shouldn't be all about teaching since everyone might get bored and teenagers are supposed to go wild. The old geezer decides to cancel all the classes today so that they can show their support for Haemin to the fullest. After that, Haemin just sits outside school thinking that he is totally screwed because he just wanted to be in the same class as Ina quietly and have a quiet wedding together in a quiet outdoor venue. Just then, Yoon shows up, who is the mastermind behind all his troubles. Yoon says that all she did was help promote the event a little and he is the one who agreed to race, but Haemin says that he didn't ask for a marketing campaign. Yoon says that she already knows that he didn't ask that because he never actually swam before. Hearing that, Haemin is visibly caught off guard and surprised, but Yoon steps in closer to him and tells him straight up that he is absolutely terrible at lying because she can read every single thing going on in his head just by looking at his face like it is an open book with nothing hidden. Haemin takes a breath and asks her what exactly she is planning to do with this information now that she has figured it out, and asks her outright whether she is going to go ahead and expose the whole truth to everyone around them. Haemin then opens up a little and explains that some strange rumors started spreading around at some point and everybody just ran with whatever version of events they personally wanted to believe, and that the whole thing started from nothing more than a simple misunderstanding, and on top of that he genuinely has no idea how or why people got it into their heads that he is some kind of skilled swimmer in the first place. He goes further and makes it clear that at the end of the day he is just a completely normal high school student and nothing more than that. Yoon then comes up with a suggestion and tells him that they could just call the whole thing off right here and now, and that she will personally step in and take care of everything on her end, so they can just pretend none of this ever happened and Haemin can walk away from the swimming club without any further drama. Yoon also acknowledges that Ina is going to be genuinely heartbroken over it since the swimming club will end up getting disbanded as a result, but then she flips it around and tells him that if he chooses to stay and see it through, he could end up becoming the king of the whole situation, and could even go on to win Ina over and build a wonderful life together with her someday. She also throws in that she is going to make his dream a real and living thing and turn him into a true master of swimming before all is said and done. At first, Haemin feels surprised for a few seconds and wonders why she is willing to help him at all. He then says that he does not think it is going to work out, and he believes he will not learn anything from someone like her. Hearing this, Yoon becomes furious and begins to explain things to him, since she thinks he clearly does not understand the situation. She points out that she and Sae-hyun have been close friends since kindergarten, making it clear that their connection goes way back. After that, she asks Haemin how he thinks Sae-hyun became so skilled at swimming and questions whether he is curious to know the real reason behind it. Haemin becomes confused by this and wonders if it might be some kind of hidden secret that only a genius would have. His imagination starts running wild, and he nervously asks whether Sae-hyun made some kind of deal with the devil or perhaps trained in secret under a wise and mysterious hermit master. Despite all of this, Yoon remains completely silent and does not respond at all, which makes Haemin start thinking more deeply about the situation. As he slowly puts the pieces together in his mind, he begins to realize that she herself might actually be the experienced and knowledgeable master who trained Sae-hyun at some point in the past. Yoon then decides to lean into it and plays along like she really is that master figure, and tells Haemin to stop asking questions and just follow her. She takes him all the way to a house that turns out to have its very own private swimming pool right on the property, and Haemin looks around and thinks to himself that she must actually be quite wealthy to have something like this. However, Yoon quickly sets the record straight and tells him that this is not her house at all, and explains that her parents happen to run a lodging business, which is why the place looks the way it does, and that Sae-hyun actually comes here every now and then to use the pool for his training sessions. She then tells Haemin to go ahead and drop his bags over on the other side and out of the way, and since he does not have a proper swimsuit on him, she tells him that he can go through the swimsuits they keep at the place and use one of those, hoping out loud that one of them will actually fit him properly. Haemin stands there feeling genuinely confused and asks her why exactly she is going this far out of her way and putting in all this effort just for him. Yoon answers that question pretty quickly by telling him that she went ahead and bet almost 300,000 won on him winning. Haemin raises an eyebrow and asks her what her reasoning was behind making a bet like that, and Yoon comes right out and says without any hesitation that she simply bet on him because she thought it would be fun and exciting to do so. However, Haemin points out that she already knew going in that he could not swim properly and that Sae-hyun is genuinely talented in the water, which is exactly why he is even more curious. Yoon says that she actually finds it fun to root for the underdog. She also says that even if she is rooting for the underdog, it's only fun if they have a fighting chance, and from what she can, he has talent. Haemin says that she never has seen him swim, so how does she knows that, and Yoon replies that she doesn't need to watch him as she can still tell. She explains that his height and broad shoulders and hands, too big and long arms, and a developed upper body, which means he were born to swim. After changing to his swim shorts, Haemin thinks that they are just way too tight, so Yoon tells him to wear it since that's the biggest size she have. She then asks him if he know how to float and asks him about the story of saving a grandpa from drowning earlier. Haemin explains that he was having a race with him at a public pool when his heart stopped, so he had to save him. Yoon gets curious and asks him about which public pool he went to, and upon learning that it was Goyang, she gets surprised. She thinks that Goyang has 50-meter lane, and to think that Haemin was racing there before saving the grandpa shows that he is not a beginner. Yoon then tells Haemin to go ahead and stand right on the very edge of the pool, and before he even has a moment to react or process what is happening, she comes up from behind him and grabs hold of him and casually mentions that the pool happens to be 3 meters deep, and without any further warning she goes right ahead and shoves him straight into the water. Meanwhile, somewhere else entirely, a young boy is in the middle of carrying some heavy boxes around inside a factory when he stops and asks his dad where exactly he should go ahead and put them all down, and his dad tells him not to overthink it and to just leave them right there on the floor wherever he is standing. When the boy sets the box down and straightens up, something on another box nearby catches his eye and he spots what appears to be Haemin's merchandise sitting right there, and he turns to his dad and asks him what the deal is with all of that. The boy's dad explains that he received a rush order for all of it just the previous day, and that it came in from some high school kid over at Taepyeong High who needed it done quickly. The dad goes on to explain further that 2 students came in person to sort everything out, one with long hair and one wearing glasses, and they went ahead and explained exactly what they needed, but the dad honestly could not make heads or tails of a single thing they were trying to tell him throughout the whole conversation. As it all starts clicking together, it turns out that the boy actually recognizes Haemin from a long time ago, and the realization hits him as he thinks to himself that this is where Haemin has been hiding away all along. After falling into the pool, Haemin quickly scrambles and rushes his way over to the edge of the water to pull himself together. He then looks up and finds Yoon standing there wearing a full lifeguard uniform and immediately asks her when exactly she found the time to go and change into that. Since she has absolutely nothing to say back to that, he shifts and asks her whether she is planning on getting into the water at any point, and then goes ahead and asks her outright whether she genuinely does not know how to swim at all. Yoon blows her whistle right in his face and bluntly tells him that coaches are not the ones who get in the water, and a person does not need to be good at swimming to teach others properly. She goes even further and tells him that she has watched his entire training process and gone over it so many times that she has completely lost count, and that absolutely everything that went into making him the swimmer he is right now is stored and locked away inside her head. Haemin then glances down and notices that there is some kind of band strapped around his waist that he was not aware of before, and he asks Yoon what exactly it is, so she explains to him that it is called a resistance belt and that it is a specific swimming training tool designed to make him push through both the natural resistance of the water and the constant pull of a rubber cord working against him at the same time. She also mentions as an extra little detail that Sae-hyun himself was training with that exact same belt just the previous week. Yoon then tells him that his goal for today is to get as close to Sae-hyun's record as he possibly can and use that as his target to work toward. Hearing that, something shifts in Haemin and he gets completely serious and locked in, telling Yoon to go ahead and pass him the goggles because he is about to show her something truly amazing that she is not going to be expecting. Yoon then tells him to relax and just swim a simple 25 meters and treat it as a light warm-up session, and since it is his first time doing this kind of training, she went ahead and started him off with the weakest cord they have available. However, Haemin is not interested in taking it easy at all and tells her flat out that he wants to use the strongest cord they have instead of the weak one. After they go ahead and swap the belt out for the stronger one, he jumps back into the pool and launches straight into his race without hesitating for a single second. Yoon watches him and thinks to herself that he is genuinely pretty strong and has real power behind him, but she still cannot shake the feeling that this is going to turn out to be a whole lot harder than Haemin is making it look right now in his head. Haemin pushes himself as hard as he possibly can and tries to get as far through the water as he can manage. The moment the belt starts pulling back against him and holding him in place, he thinks to himself that if he is ever going to beat Sae-hyun, then this kind of resistance needs to feel like an absolute walk in the park to him. With all of that motivation about taking Sae-hyun down burning inside of him, he digs deep and charges forward with everything he has. Yoon meanwhile is starting to have serious doubts and thinks to herself that Haemin might genuinely not be anywhere near ready for this yet, because the tension in that cord is specifically designed so that even on dry land a person can barely stretch it out to 25 meters. Right at that tense moment, a coach suddenly appears out of nowhere and startles Yoon badly, asking her whether Haemin is a brand new swimmer. Yoon asks the coach what he was doing inside and asks if there was any training scheduled here today. The coach says that he just came to grab some equipment and asks Yoon who is that guy swimming. Yoon replies that he is just a classmate and not an athlete yet. The coach then watches him for a while before saying that he is not sure if he got what it takes to be an athlete since his form is a mess. Yoon then tells the coach that he has never learned to swim and asks the coach if he thinks Haemin is strong. However, the coach says that strength alone won't get him far as lots of athletes are strong and what matters is a natural feel for the water. Since Yoon does not reply, the coach turns his attention back to Haemin and watches him move through the water for a while longer before finally coming to the conclusion that the kid is genuinely strong and has something real going for him. The coach then reaches into his backpack and pulls something out and hands it over to the girl, telling her that Haemin needs to start by learning how to properly catch the water first before anything else, and then move on to working on getting his kicks right after that foundation is built. Just as the coach is getting ready to leave and head out, Haemin finishes up his swimming and pulls himself up and out of the pool at that same moment. The coach stops and turns to Haemin and tells him straight up that he has got a genuine swimmer's build on him, and then points out that if he is out here trying to copy Sae-hyun's training routine, then he is going about it in completely the wrong way and needs to rethink his approach entirely. Once the coach walks away and is gone, Yoon turns to Haemin and lets him know that he went ahead and passed the entrance test, but Haemin is barely even processing that information and instead asks her who that old guy even was. Yoon tells him that the man he just spoke to is actually Sae-hyun's personal team coach, and Haemin's eyes go wide with surprise as it fully sinks in that the person he was just casually talking to is the real person behind Sae-hyun's entire development as a swimmer. After that, Yoon wastes no time and tells Haemin bluntly that his form is absolutely terrible and a complete mess, so the very first thing they are going to be focusing on is catch training and nothing else until he gets it right. The next day at school, Haemin looks extremely tired, so much so that Yoon starts to feel genuinely worried when she notices how exhausted he seems. It turns out that Haemin was swimming late into the night before, and even though he sleeps afterward, his body still feels worn out and his shoulders continue to ache. Because of this, he tells Yoon that he plans to take a nap during class, and he asks her to tell the teacher that he is not feeling well if the teacher happens to ask about him. As Haemin drifts off to sleep, he dreams about a tense baseball game that is in the bottom of the 9th inning with 2 outs already. The entire match comes down to one final swing, and the moment feels critical as the pitcher carefully checks the signs before making his move. When the pitcher finally throws the ball, the batter suddenly walks away instead of swinging, and the runner makes it home, which causes the game to end immediately. After that, in the dream, the other players quickly gather around the pitcher and begin to confront him angrily, questioning why he throws the ball like that when they are right on the verge of winning. They express their frustration clearly, pointing out that if he had just pitched properly, they would have won the game, and they all believe that it is completely his fault that they lose. Haemin tries his absolute best to get a word in and explain to them that it was not his fault at all, but nobody is willing to stop and actually listen to anything he has to say, and the whole group keeps coming at him and asks him if he is seriously trying to sit there and push the blame onto someone else, demanding to know that if it was not him then who exactly was responsible for what happened. The massive catcher from his own team then walks straight up to him and gets in his face, asking him why he is just standing there in the middle of the stadium with no clothes on and questioning whether he thinks baseball is some kind of joke that nobody needs to take seriously. Haemin keeps desperately telling them over and over again that they cannot just leave him behind because there was nothing he was even supposed to do out there in the first place. Eventually, the entire team turns their backs on him and walks away one by one, and it becomes clear that this whole thing was meant to represent the journey Haemin has been through up until this point in his life, and the boy standing alone in the middle of it all turns out to be Haemin himself. Right after that, Haemin snaps awake from that strange and unsettling dream, and one of the girls nearby asks him with a concerned look on her face whether he is doing okay. The girl then tells him that the 5th period is already starting and that she had tried multiple times to wake him up during lunch, but he would not budge or respond no matter what she did, and now everyone has already gone off to their respective clubs and left without him. Later, Haemin goes to the official library club of Taepyeong High, where a bunch of other strange otaku students are sitting quietly like statues without moving much. Ji-yoon, who is the head of the library club, introduces herself and thanks everyone for applying to join her club. She explains that their duties include shelving books properly and maintaining order inside the library, and that the club is not really about personal achievement or having fun. She then says that she believes the reason they all applied is because of the special benefits given to library club members. After hearing that, everyone looks at her with curiosity, waiting to hear more. When she finally announces that she is talking about the privilege of borrowing 3 more books than normal students, everyone suddenly reacts with excitement. She also adds that members get 20 days to return books instead of the usual 15, and the group starts cheering loudly for her. Even so, Haemin looks confused and asks them why that is supposed to be such a big deal, and upon hearing that, the club leader becomes angry and asks him to repeat what he just said. At that moment, Haemin completely changes his tone and nicely says that his question was a philosophical inquiry as a lover of books himself, and in the end, books are about passion, not numbers. After that, Haemin gets back to his work with putting the books in the shelf. One of the girls named Jaihai stops him and points out that the books he is placing are going on the wrong shelves since they are supposed to go in descending order going downward. Haemin takes a moment and then realizes that she is actually the same girl that Saihyun brought along when he showed up to join the swimming club. He goes ahead and asks her what made her decide to join the swimming club in the first place, and when she does not say anything back and just stays quiet, Haemin quickly feels bad and apologizes and tells her that he did not mean to pry into her business at all and that he simply thought she looked genuinely happy being there. The girl then quietly mumbles something about it being because of the swimsuit, but Haemin cannot quite make out what she is saying properly and ends up assuming she means something completely different from what she actually said. The girl then gathers herself and explains more clearly that she personally thinks the human body is something truly beautiful, and the moment the words leave her mouth she gets so overwhelmed with embarrassment that she turns and runs away without another word. Right at that moment, another girl shows up beside Haemin and fills him in by telling him that Jaihai is an absolute hardcore nerd when it comes to anything related to ancient Greece, and that she spends the majority of whatever she reads diving deep into everything about ancient Greek culture and history. Haemin then feels his phone buzz and sees that he has received a text from Ina on the group chat, and she is letting everyone know that she wants the whole group to come to the multipurpose room once their other clubs are finished for the day because there are some important things they need to sit down and discuss about the swimming club going forward. Later that same day, Haemin makes his way back to the classroom where he finds Ina sitting there alone, and he asks her where everyone else has disappeared to. Ina tells him that Saihyun just stepped out to the bathroom and that Yoon and the guy with glasses have not shown up yet. Haemin then quietly makes his way back over to his seat without making much of a fuss about it, and Ina does the same and goes back to her seat as well, and the two of them sitting there in silence together makes the whole atmosphere feel even more awkward and uncomfortable than it already was. Haemin sits there wondering to himself whether he should try to say something to break the tension, but instead of following through on that he ends up letting out a long yawn in a completely strange and unusual posture without really thinking about it. Right at that moment, Saihyun walks back in through the door and immediately catches sight of Haemin mid-yawn, and what catches his attention is that the posture Haemin has naturally fallen into while yawning is a perfect streamlined position without him even realizing it or trying to achieve it. In a flashback where Saihyun's coach catches him in the middle of smoking and comes down hard on him for it without holding anything back. Saihyun pushes back and tells his coach that there is absolutely nothing wrong with his times right now and that it is not that big of a deal. The coach tells him firmly that it is completely normal for times to keep improving while his body is still growing and developing, but that a slump is going to show up sooner or later no matter what, and that the only real way to push through it when it does arrive is through genuine and consistent discipline in every area of his life. The coach goes on to add that every single small habit and every careless and thoughtless action a person makes adds up over time and piles on top of each other until the weight of all of it eventually breaks them down completely from the inside. He also makes it very clear that if Saihyun truly wants to reach the highest level of swimming and be genuinely great at it, then he is going to have to be willing to devote every part of his life to it without exception. The coach does not stop there and keeps going, telling Saihyun that he should be going to bed every single night with swimming on his mind, dreaming about it while he is sound asleep, and then waking up every morning and going through the entire day breathing and moving as if he is constantly in the water no matter where he is or what he is doing. Saihyun sits there quietly and takes in everything the coach is laying out in front of him without saying a word, and the coach continues pressing him and tells him that wanting to call himself a swimmer without having that level of total and consuming obsession burning inside of him is nothing short of an insult and an affront to the sport itself and everyone who has ever dedicated their life to it. Back in the present, Saihyun finds himself looking at Haemin and genuinely wondering whether this guy might actually be obsessed with swimming in that exact way, because from where Saihyun is standing it looks like Haemin is using every single spare moment he has available to him as an opportunity to train his body without even making a conscious effort to do so. Once everyone finally makes their way into the classroom and settles in, Aina steps up and gets the club meeting going, telling the group that the reason she wanted to bring them all together was specifically to talk about and plan out their very first swimming club activity. Both Haemin and Saihyun look surprised when they hear that, since the swimming club has not even received official approval yet, and here she is already talking about jumping straight into their first activity like everything is already sorted. Aina explains her reasoning by saying that she does not think it makes any sense to just sit around and wait doing nothing, and that actually going ahead and putting together a real club activity might go a long way toward convincing the teachers that they are genuinely serious and dedicated enough to deserve that official approval. One of the boys asks Aina about the activity, and she says that since the two of them have already decided race, she thinks that they should make that their first swimming club event. Saihyun and Haemin show little interest, but Yoon shows up and say that she will provide the venue and they should invite a bunch of people and make it into a proper event. Haemin says that it sounds like she already planned everything out, and Saihyun tells him that it was obvious she planned when she hung up the banners. Aina then tells everyone that they should meet next Wednesday after school at Yoon's pool. Time goes by fast, and everyone continues with their swimming practice, and now it's the day of the race between Haemin and Saihyun that everyone has been desperately waiting for. Both of them stands near the pool and mocks each other, saying each of them is going to win. Changsik asks Yoon that if Haemin wins then Saihyun is going to join the club, but he also wonders what would happen if Haemin loses. Yoon says that she hasn't thought about that, and Changsik says that if he loses, it means they are going to disband the club. Deep down, Yoon thinks that he has been prepping pretty hard for a week and Saihyun better take this seriously. After that, both of the boys get ready for the race while Yoon thinks that Haemin is naturally born talented. Saihyun glances over just before the race begins and notices that Haemin is striking some kind of strange and unusual pose while standing at the edge of the pool getting ready to jump in. The race then kicks off with both of them launching themselves into the water at the same time, and Saihyun thinks to himself that he has no idea what Haemin is trying to pull with whatever that was, but he makes a mental note to keep a close eye on him throughout the whole thing. Everyone sitting and standing in the audience is immediately blown away the moment Saihyun makes his jump, and the crowd buzzes with surprise as people start saying out loud that he looks absolutely incredible doing it. A guy then comes next to Aina and Yoon, jumping in to point out that Saihyun's start is so perfectly clean that barely a single drop of water splashed up when he entered the pool. However, both girls started wondering who this person is that just appeared out of nowhere and started talking to them like he belongs there, and it turns out he is actually one of the lifeguards on duty who has been watching the whole thing. He then tells Yoon to stop worrying about who he is and just turn her attention back toward the match where it belongs instead of peppering him with questions. Right after that, Haemin makes his own jump and hits the water and immediately starts tearing through it towards Saihyun at a speed that catches just about everyone watching completely off guard. Seeing that, everyone gets surprised as they think that Haemin is actually flying and they wonder how he leaped that far. Suddenly, Saihyun feels like there is some kind of earthquake happening in the pool. The lifeguard is surprised thinking the waves are affecting Saihyun's speed, and Saihyun's start was faster but they surfaced almost at the same point. The lifeguard can't even tell who is ahead at this point and thinks that just as important as the start is a clean breakout that minimizes drag, and he is going to show him. After that, Saihyun gets on the top of the pool to try doing a breakout technique, but as soon as he gets out, he finds Haemin staring at him closely. After that, Haemin leaves Saihyun behind and charges forward that completely leaves Saihyun struggling as he is furious at Haemin. Seeing that, the audience is also surprised and thinks that Haemin surfaced first fluently. However, Saihyun thinks that Haemin is toying with him and wonders if he is actually good enough to prank him like that. Aina also points out that she has never seen anyone like that. One of Changsik is actually confused, wondering if that's a disqualification because Haemin crossed into the next lane. Yoon gets excited and tells him that no one cares about that as it's not an official event and all that matters here is just winning. On the other hand, the lifeguard says that Haemin's biggest weakness was side, but now it's something else. Curiously, Yoon asks him what side is, and he explains that it's a mixture of 3 techniques consisting of start, dolphin kick and breakout that hugely affect race time. He also adds that the quality of side decides his early momentum and in sprints, comebacks are rare. The lifeguard further explains that they could say that the rankings are practically set by the side stage, so, unless something drastic happens, Haemin's win is only a matter of time. After that, both of the players are charging as fast as they can and Sae-hyun is furious at Haemin for insulting him like this. After that, both of them continue swimming as fast as they possibly can, and Chang-sik keeps thinking that the gap between them will not close so easily. The lifeguard watches in disbelief as Haemin is actually leading the race against a city tournament champion and wonders who could have taught him how to swim so well in such a short amount of time. Deep down, Yoon believes that it was somehow her influence, even though she herself does not really know how to swim properly. She reflects on how she always knew Haemin would be fast, and even though he has never received any formal training in swimming, it still feels completely wrong to call him just a beginner. In a flashback, Haemin is still training under Yoon, while she carefully keeps track of his time. Yoon is genuinely surprised when she looks at the timer and wonders how she even managed to record it so accurately. Meanwhile, Haemin asks her to tell him his time, and as she looks at him more closely, she notices that he has a strong body with broad shoulders and clearly has the natural build of a swimmer. She further thinks to herself that when it comes to actual technique, he moves like a complete newbie who has never once been properly taught how to swim in his entire life, and what makes it even more striking to her is that she cannot even swim herself and yet she can still clearly see just how bad it is. She also thinks that compared to Sae-hyun, both Haemin's form and his breathing are an absolute and total mess from start to finish, and yet despite all of that he is sitting here telling her that what she just witnessed is a beginner-level record. Yoon goes ahead and reads the record out to him, and the moment Haemin hears it his face twists up with frustration, which immediately prompts Yoon to ask him why he is getting so upset over it. Haemin fires back and says that she told him Sae-hyun's 50-meter record sits at 23 seconds, and here he is not even managing to break 30 seconds after putting in 3 full days of this kind of training, so he cannot wrap his head around how he is supposed to close a gap that massive and actually beat him at this rate. Yoon then asks him whether he is aware of the fact that Sae-hyun used to be a competitive youth swimmer who has been at this for years. Haemin tells her that he honestly does not care whether Sae-hyun was a trained athlete or not, but Yoon is still stuck on the fact that she cannot quite make sense of how Haemin managed to pull a record like that right from the very beginning with no real background in swimming. Haemin tells her that they should just reset and go again without wasting any more time talking about it, and Yoon reminds him that this is already his 6th attempt today and that his body has got to be running on empty by now. However, Haemin says that being in water cools him down right away and he thinks he could go another 5 or 6 rounds. Yoon then starts questioning him, asking if he learned swimming when he was a kid, and Haemin says that he did in kindergarten, but it wasn't a proper swimming. After that, Haemin continues swimming in the water and Yoon thinks that he is natural in the water. Back in present, a strange guy says that Haemin is going to lose, so everyone turns to him. A guy named Inji steps forward saying he happened to be the representative of Class 3, next to theirs, and for the record he liked to point out that identifying people just by glasses is extremely rude. It turns out, he is mad at Yoon for comparing him with Chang-sik of their swimming club. Inji further says that if it's hard, he suggests distinguishing them by physical build and says that he enjoys going to the gym, so he is on the bigger side. The lifeguard cuts him off and tells him to save the introductions for later and just get straight to explaining why exactly he thinks that Haemin is going to come out on the losing end of this race. Inji goes ahead and lays it out by saying that while Haemin is undeniably strong and has real power behind him, his form is sloppy and all over the place, and the reality is that Sae-hyun was always going to win this thing from the very moment it was set up. He goes further and explains that even though Haemin somehow managed to pull ahead first and build up a lead, this is a short course pool they are dealing with and there is still an entire section left in the race that is going to demand advanced techniques that not just anyone can pull off under pressure. After laying all of that out, he tells everyone to stop talking for a second and direct their attention over to the pool and specifically points out the turn that is coming up at the 25-meter mark and tells them to watch it closely. Upon taking a good look at what Inji is pointing to, the lifeguard admits that he might actually have a point, and connects the dots by saying that what Inji is getting at is that Haemin's weak and underdeveloped turn technique is going to be the exact opening that Sae-hyun needs to close the gap between them. The lifeguard then turns back to Inji and asks him whether a single turn can really make enough of a difference to erase the lead that Haemin has built up. Inji tells him plainly that it all comes down entirely to how well Haemin executes his turning skill and whether he manages to pull off a proper and clean turn when the moment arrives. After that, both swimmers reach the turn at the same time, and when the moment comes, Haemin throws down an absolutely flawless technique that sends him flying through the turn with zero wasted movement, while Haemin on the other hand struggles and flounders in place and loses everything he had going for him in that single critical moment. It turns out that the proper way to perform a perfect turn is very precise, as when the distance reaches about 5 meters, a swimmer should start to carefully judge how far they are from the wall, and when it becomes 3 meters, they should focus on steadying their breathing to stay in control. As the distance shortens to 2 meters, they should lower their arms to their sides and begin preparing their body for the turn. Finally, they need to tuck their chin tightly to their chest and start curling their body inward. At the same time, they should quickly snap their knees in and bend their entire body to execute a fast and smooth flip. After completing the rotation, they must push off the wall with as much force as possible and continue rolling until their body turns and their stomach faces downward again. However, if someone tries to do all of this consciously step by step, they will most likely fail, because the movement needs to come out naturally and automatically, which only happens after practicing it thousands, or even tens of thousands of times. After explaining this, Inji looks at everyone around him and makes it clear that in modern competitive swimming, not a single serious swimmer participates in freestyle events without using a flip turn as a key part of their technique. He breaks it down further and explains that the reason every serious competitive swimmer makes the switch to flip turns is simply because there is no faster or more efficient way to change direction at the wall than a properly executed flip turn when everything is done right. Inji then backs up everything he is saying by pointing out that when researchers and coaches actually went ahead and sat down to compare flip turns against open side turns among top-level competitive swimming athletes, the results that came back were pretty telling and showed a clear and consistent difference of roughly 0.8 seconds per turn between the two methods when measured carefully. Inji understands better than most people standing around that pool that in a sport where every single fraction of a second carries an enormous amount of weight and has the very real power to completely flip the outcome of an entire race on its head, a difference of that size is nothing short of absolutely game-changing for whoever happens to hold that technical advantage over their competitor, and that is already giving the benefit of the doubt and assuming that a proper and genuinely clean open side turn is being executed at the wall in the first place rather than a rushed and panicked one. However, given the way Haemin's turn looked out there with all its sloppiness and wasted movement, it would not have mattered one bit how far ahead he managed to get himself during the race because that lead was always going to evaporate the moment he hit that wall. The race pushes forward with Haemin grinding and fighting with everything he has left to keep moving ahead, all while thinking to himself that there are roughly 20 meters left to go at this point and the realistic chance of pulling off any kind of comeback has dropped down to almost zero. Haemin has no idea why he fell behind when he was in the lead. He then thinks about how Aina is watching and so are the others. Haemin's mind then drifts to doing some cheap tricks, but he believes that if the cheap tricks are allowed then it wouldn't be called a sport. After that, Haemin charges forward with 200% strength. He swims so fast that everyone watching gets stunned. The lifeguard realizes that something changes with Haemin just now. Inji also thinks that Haemin is finally catching the water properly and wonders if he figures something out. Haemin then gets quite forward and wonders if he catches up to Haemin. When Haemin finally looks around and gets his bearings, he finds that Haemin is already standing at the finish line waiting like he has been there for a while, and it becomes clear to everyone that Haemin has won the race without any question and the entire crowd erupts into cheers for both of them. Haemin then turns to Haemin and asks him with a smirk whether he is really not an athlete of any kind, and tells him that despite everything it was actually a genuinely fun race to be a part of. Haemin then moves in closer to him, telling Haemin that swimming is not some easy sport that guys like him can just casually dabble in whenever they feel like it just for the thrill of it. Haemin then storms right past Aina without a word and announces furiously that he is leaving the club, but Yoon immediately gets fired up at him and calls him out for being so unbelievably rude about the whole thing. Haemin then turns to the girls and apologizes to them for what he considers to be a completely trash performance on his part, but the girls push back right away and tell him that he did a genuinely good job out there and that the race was absolutely worth watching every second of. Haemin says that not only did he lose but he also wasted their time and ended up letting all of them down in the process. Aina steps in and tells him firmly that he should not be saying things like that, and that getting to watch the two of them go head-to-head out there was nothing short of a privilege for everyone present. Aina goes on to say that the fact that he did not back down from the challenge and pushed through and finished the race all the way to the very end was genuinely cool in its own right and something to be proud of regardless of the outcome. On this particular day, something shifts inside Haemin and he comes to a brand new realization that losing does not always have to feel like something completely miserable and crushing. After that, Haemin notices a strange guy walking towards him, and Haemin is surprised to see him asking how he knew that he was here. The guy then shows Haemin his upcoming match merch that clearly shows the date of the match. The guy then tells him that he enjoyed his match and wonders if Haemin has started swimming now. Haemin gets nervous and says that this was just a one-time thing and he is not really serious about it. Upon hearing that, the situation gets even more awkward and the girls wonders that the situation is almost like Haemin met up with an ex. Haemin then tries to carry the conversation with the guy asking if he doesn't live around here. However, the guy then glances at Haemin and says that he was just passing by and he wondered if Haemin were doing well. He then says that he has something to do so he is going to leave now. Once he leaves, everyone wonders who that guy was and why is Haemin turning into a zombie after seeing him. Aina then gives Haemin a towel saying he might catch a cold so he should get changed. After that whole situation, Haemin did not say another single word to anyone and just went straight home, and then the very next day he was nowhere to be seen at school. The day after that he was absent again, and it kept going all the way through the rest of the week, and then even through the Monday that came after the weekend with still no sign of him showing up. Yoon is starting to lose her mind over it at this point and cannot help but wonder out loud whether this is really something worth sulking over this hard, since at the end of the day all that happened was that Haemin lost a single swimming match and nothing more than that. Changsik jumps in and reminds her that it was not just some random low-key match that nobody paid attention to, because rumors had spread all over the school beforehand and the whole student body showed up to watch because of some weird bet that was going around, and on top of that Haemin himself was the one who made that bet in the first place, which made it all a much bigger deal than a normal race would have been. Yoon pushes back and says that nobody outside of Haemin actually cares about how the outcome turned out, and she also points out that Haemin himself seemed to be having a genuinely good time during the race while it was happening. She also brings up the fact that Haemin is not showing up to school at all and is not even bothering to respond to any of her texts no matter how many she sends. Yoon then turns to Aina and asks her whether he is ignoring her messages too, and it turns out that he does not seem to care about responding to Aina either, which catches everyone off guard. Yoon then sits back and thinks to herself that this has to be something a lot more serious than just losing a race, and that there must be a bigger piece of the story that none of them are seeing yet. She also figures out that ever since he met that Scarface, he hasn't been himself, so she wonders who is that guy to Haemin and wonders if he borrowed money from him. Even so, she believes that the Scarface is the key to this whole thing and he turned brave, stoic Haemin into a whimpering coward. Just then, another girl shows up and scars Yoon saying the teacher wants to see all of them. Hearing that, Yoon gets scared thinking Haemin might have report them for bullying. Later, Yoon tells the homeroom teacher about things related to bullying and now he is worried that all of them are being bullying. He asks the team if they should head to the counseling office and the homeroom teacher further tells them that if there is anything, they can always tell the teachers. He also asks them why there are only 4 of them for the swimming club that they talked about last time. Yoon then explains the whole situation to the teacher, and he freaks out that Saihyun left the club after he won his swimming bet, and Haemin is going no contact after losing the match. Aina then begs the teacher not to cancel the club as they just need a little more time. The homeroom teacher then reveals that he already filed all the paperwork and even got the principal's stamp. He also says that the principal was so happy that he bragged about it everywhere and he thinks that if the club gets shut down now over something like this then the principal is going to get furious. The teacher believes that if he goes to the principal, he will just praise the Taepyeong High Swimming Club and say he fully supports it. The teacher then asked the principal why his mind changed and the principal told him that it's because Haemin did something remarkable for this school. He also says that they are living in an age of cutthroat competition and rampant envy all around them, but that Haemin held his head high throughout all of it and flat out refused to give in to any of it no matter how much pressure was piling up around him. The principal also told him that this is an opportunity that a school like theirs simply cannot afford to pass up, because a school that is only ever known for sending students off to top universities is honestly just boring and does not stand out in any meaningful way. The principal also turns to the teacher and tells him directly that his role in all of this is absolutely crucial and that he needs to make sure that the kids in the swimming club do not go off track or lose their way at any point throughout the whole process. He goes even further and adds that there should especially be no fights or conflicts serious enough to make someone want to quit the club, and absolutely no one should be approaching this great sport with selfish or impure intentions that have nothing to do with actually swimming. Back in the present, the homeroom teacher gathers the team together and tells them all that from this point forward every single one of them is in the same boat together and that their priority right now is to find a way to bring both Saihyun and Haemin back into the fold before things fall apart completely. On her way back home that evening, Ina finds herself going over everything in her head and wondering what on earth is going on with Haemin, because she genuinely wants to sit down and talk to him face to face, but he has not even been showing up to school lately. However, just as she is sitting on the bus, she happens to glance out of the window and spots what she is convinced is Haemin walking along outside. She quickly reaches over and shoves the window open and shouts out at him as loud as she can, but the bus has already started pulling away. Without hesitating, Ina lunges toward the emergency button and presses it and tells everyone that she needs to get off right here and right now. Once she makes it outside, she spots the person she thought was Haemin walking along on the other side of the road and immediately takes off sprinting toward him with everything she has got. When she finally manages to catch up to him and close the distance, she pulls up and gets a proper look at his face, only to be completely shocked by the realization that the person standing in front of her is absolutely not Haemin at all. Ina stands there confused and wonders to herself whether she grabbed onto the wrong person entirely, but at the same time she is completely certain in her mind that it really was Haemin she saw from the window. Hearing that, the guy standing in front of her starts blushing, and he concludes in his head that this whole thing must be some kind of bold pickup line she is running on him. He goes on to say that he normally cannot stand this kind of approach from people, but that he has a deep respect for the level of courage she is showing right now, and that just this one single time he is willing to go ahead and give her his number as a reward for the effort. Before he even gets the chance to follow through and actually hand over his number, Ina turns around and takes off running away from the situation as fast as her legs will carry her. The very next day, the homeroom teacher does his best to get in touch with Haemin and reach him, but Haemin brushes it off and makes up an excuse on the spot, telling him that he has come down with a fever and that he is not going to be able to make it in the following day either. The homeroom teacher wonders how long he is going to be absent for and wonders if he is actually sick. Later, Chang-sik tells Yoon that he doesn't get one thing, which is that the school won't do anything if someone's absent this long. Yoon says that Haemin said he is sick so the school can't do anything about that. Chang-sik then asks her what she is doing, and she says that she is just playing video games, but Chang-sik wonders why she is doing that when they were supposed to look for Scarface. Yoon says that she has done so much research that her head hurts, and Chang-sik says that she is faking that because all she had to do was ask AI some questions. Chang-sik then tells her that he did not find anything because Haemin doesn't use social media and there's no trace of him online. He also says that they don't know that guy's name or his age and they need to learn more about Haemin's past. Just then, Chang-sik finds a clip of Haemin playing baseball and this surprises them. Yoon notices that Haemin used to be in Songbeek Middle School and she doesn't think it's around here. Chang-sik says that Songbeek Middle School is located in a city famous for its baseball team that won the national tournament. Yoon asks him if the channel have other videos or links. Chang-sik says that this is the only video that's just Haemin and the others are different middle school players. He also figures out that the national championship was last year and wonders if Haemin have been part of the winning team. Yoon then notices something in the video and tells him to pause as she thinks that the one that's been catching the whole time is Scarface. Since the video quality is not clear enough to make anything out properly, they cannot figure out what they are looking for and Yoon tells him to go ahead and search for another video that might give them a better look. The two of them then manage to dig up another video, and in this one they can clearly and unmistakably make out the Scarface guy that they had both encountered the other day standing right there on screen. The story then shifts into a flashback where Haemin is hanging out and relaxing with the rest of his baseball team out on the pitch, and someone from the group turns to him and asks him how he is feeling given the fact that tomorrow is going to be his very first game at the national tournament, which is a pretty massive deal for anyone. Haemin responds in his usual laid-back way and says that he is not the least bit worried about any of it because Hyoku, the guy with the scar on his face, is going to step up and handle everything for him out there. Hyoku looks back at him completely confused and points out that he is a catcher and cannot quite wrap his head around why Haemin is expecting him to carry the whole thing on his shoulders. Moving on from that, someone else in the group asks Haemin to go ahead and give them all a proper word of determination and fire them up before the big day, and Haemin responds by simply making a tight fist and telling them all that baseball is his entire world and that their team is packed full of absolute beasts from top to bottom. Back to the present, Yoon tells him that her mind is completely made up and that this coming Saturday the two of them need to be at Seoul Station together by 9 in the morning sharp, and if he shows up even a single minute late then she is going to kill him. It turns out that Haemin used to be a pitcher for the baseball club at Jigu Elementary School. His main weapon as a pitcher is a four-seam fastball, a pitch that has surprisingly strong velocity for someone his age while also maintaining fairly steady control. Meanwhile, Hyoku plays as the catcher and has a physical build that is unusual for a middle school student. On top of that, he stays calm under pressure and almost never loses focus during a game. During one of the matches, the team's coach reflects on how he has never coached a team this talented in his entire 10-year baseball coaching career. He believes the team has been given an once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and truly has a real chance at winning the national championship. At the same time, the coach feels confident that the players all get along well enough, as long as nothing major happens to disrupt the team's atmosphere. As his thoughts continue, the coach starts planning out his future, imagining himself becoming the coach who wins the national tournament, renews his contract afterward, receives a raise, and then lives smoothly from that point on. After pushing through a long and grueling stretch of training, Haemin finally gets a moment to breathe and collapses down onto the ground to recover, and Hyoku walks over and brings him a cold cola to help him cool down after everything they just put their bodies through together. The two coaches standing nearby notice the moment between them and start talking about it, and one of them says that he genuinely cannot figure kids that age out at all because one minute they look like sworn enemies who are ready to tear each other apart, and then the very next minute they are sitting side by side looking completely tight and comfortable with each other like nothing ever happened between them. He admits that he cannot even tell anymore whether the two of them are actually getting along or not, and the head coach jumps in and says that at the very least they are not out there throwing punches at each other anymore, which is something to be grateful for. He also tells the other coach to stop overanalyzing it and not worry too much about what he is seeing, because the reason it all looks so confusing and contradictory is that he is trying to make sense of it through the lens of an adult, and kids simply do not operate the same way adults do. He explains that kids do not paste on fake smiles to keep the peace bottle up their anger and resentment the way adults have learned to do over the years, and that whatever he witnessed between those two was most likely exactly what it appeared to be on the surface. That same night, one of the coaches gets curious and asks the other one what exactly started the whole fight between Haemin and the other guy in the first place, and the coach responds that the two of them were going back and forth and arguing over which girl group was the best one out there. The main coach gets surprised to hear that they were throwing punches over that, and the other coach says that they are lucky Hyoku was there as kids that age fear older boys more than the teachers. After that, the coaches talk about how Hyoku is a total beast who lifts weight like crazy. The next day, the coach introduces the opposing team's coach to the team, who tells everyone that he heard talk of how good Songbeek Middle School's baseball team is, so he came all the way to find out. Sometime later, the match begins with Haemin doing amazing pitches, and he thinks that the other team must be not feeling it today. As the match continues to play out, Haemin's team finds themselves struggling badly, and the gap between the two sides turns out to be way bigger and more overwhelming than anyone on the team had anticipated going in. The coach then steps in and suggests that this would actually be a good opportunity for them to go ahead and try out some of the tactics and strategies that they usually do not get the chance to pull off in regular matches, but he also makes it clear that since this whole thing came about because of his mentor's personal request, they should not even think about going easy on their opponents regardless of how the scoreboard looks. The match keeps going and the team performs so terribly that the coach reaches a point where he has to stop and ask them out loud how on earth things managed to go from landing a single hit all the way back down to suffering back-to-back defensive errors in such a short amount of time. The coach then turns his attention specifically to Jungi and asks him point blank to explain what he thought he was doing chatting around out there on the field instead of focusing, and Jungi fires back and says that the other batter was never even supposed to hit it out to the outfield in the first place, and that if Haemin had just pitched it the right way none of that would have happened. Hearing Jungi throw the blame around like that, Hyoku completely loses his temper because in his mind Jungi is just pushing everything onto someone else, so he reaches out and grabs Jungi by the collar and beats him up right then and there. Time passes by after that, and Jungi and Hyoku end up sitting together on the sidelines, and Jungi brings up the memory of the day Haemin talked back to the coach and got beaten up for it as a result. Jungi keeps going and tries to bring Haemin up further in conversation, but Hyoku cuts him off and tells him flatly that he does not want to hear that guy's name come up in front of him ever again. Back in the present, Yoon and her nerdy buddy find themselves standing at a provincial train station, and Yoon has already put him to work and is making him carry all of the bags without any room for argument. Yoon then tells him to brace himself because they have got a long way to cover today and it is already burning hot outside, so he had better not even think about getting on her nerves throughout the whole trip. Changsik gets fed up at that point and fires back at her, saying that she still has not bothered to explain to him why they are even out here in the first place and that it is the middle of summer on top of everything else. Yoon shouts right back at him and tells him that Haemin is their friend and that when a friend falls into a slump the people around them step up and help them get through it, as if that should be obvious enough without needing an explanation. Changsik shoots back and points out that she is actually the one who put him in that situation to begin with, but Yoon refuses to accept that and says that it was not her fault and that they are going to get to the bottom of everything that Haemin has been going through and figure out how to fix it once and for all. Yoon then pulls out her phone and starts searching for the address of Songbeek Middle School, and when the results come back she completely freaks out after realizing that it is way further from the station than she had assumed. After that, the two of them flag down a taxi and climb in, and the driver glances back at Yoon and casually asks her if she is heading over to Songbeek High School to go see her boyfriend. Yoon does not miss a beat and tells him straight-faced that it is actually an ex who ghosted her and that she is essentially stalking him at this point, and the driver looks genuinely scared after hearing that come out of her mouth so casually. After some time passes, the two of them finally arrive at Songbeek Middle School where a bunch of students are out on the field running baseball drills and playing. Yoon turns to Changsik and points out that the kids currently attending the school are not going to know anything about Haemin anyway since he would have been long gone before any of them showed up, so their best bet is to find someone who looks like they work there as a teacher and just go ahead and ask them directly. Right at that moment, a guy walks over toward them and introduces himself as the head coach of the Songbeek Middle School baseball team without them even having to go looking for anyone. After the quick introduction, he goes ahead and invites both of them to come inside and take a seat in the office, and he offers them something to drink, either soda or coffee, while they get settled. Yoon then gets straight to the point and explains to him that they are currently trying to track down Haemin because they are his friends and they are concerned about him, and the coach asks them where exactly they are coming from to be here. Yoon tells him that she is from Gyeonggi province and then asks him directly whether he has managed to keep in touch with Haemin at all since he left. However, the head coach tells them that keeping in touch was never really an option for anyone because at some point Haemin simply cut off all contact with everybody and vanished without leaving any kind of trail behind him. Yoon then leans forward and asks him whether anything significant or unusual happened right before he disappeared, and whether he has reached out to or contacted anyone at all since he went off the grid. Yoon then asks him if he knows anyone who has scars on his face and the head coach says that the guy is none other than Hyoku. Yoon gets excited to hear that and asks several questions, so the coach tells her that he was the catcher who played with Haemin. He also asks her if he should call him over as he's right next door. The coach then calls Hyoku and calls him over. A moment later, Hyoku arrives and he recognizes Yoon from the other day and asks what she is doing here. Yoon tells him that after Haemin saw him at pool that day he started ghosting everyone. She then asks him to tell her what happened to Haemin but Hyoku refuses. Before leaving, Hyoku tells her that Haemin went ahead and erased all of them from his life completely, and that because of that he made the decision to let him go as well and stop holding on. Yoon then turns to the head coach and asks him if all the kids from Songbeek are like that, but the coach tells her that Hyoku was actually the last one out of all of them who was still holding out and waiting for Haemin to come around, so it makes sense that he ended up feeling deeply betrayed when things went the way they did. The head coach then says that he does not know every little detail of the full story, but that he is willing to go ahead and share what he does know about what happened to Haemin back then. He explains that at the time, Haemin was a pretty well-known and respected pitcher among middle school level athletes, and that he was building up real teamwork with Hyoku and the rest of the group while getting ready and preparing for nationals. However, the problem that ended up derailing everything started with something called the yips, which is basically a mental condition where someone who has always been able to do something without thinking suddenly loses the ability to do it out of nowhere. Everyone around him figured it would pass on its own and go away after a little while, but it just kept going and getting worse until it finally blew up completely during the tournament itself and Haemin fell apart out there on the pitch. The coach also adds that the head coach back at that time wanted to keep Haemin out there in the match no matter what was happening, purely to satisfy his own selfish greed rather than doing what was actually best for Haemin. After sitting through the whole story, Yoon and Changsik say their goodbyes and head out and leave the school behind them. On their way out, Hyoku suddenly approaches the two of them and tells them that they can sit down and have a proper talk if they want. Later on, Hyoku ends up sitting down with the two of them at a nearby cafe and asks them straight up whether they are actually close with Haemin or not. Yoon thinks about it for a second and says that it is something along those lines without getting too specific about it, and Hyoku then asks her what he is actually like when he is around them on a regular basis. She tells him that he comes across as innocent and calm and kind of slow on the uptake sometimes and then turns it around and asks Hyoku what he was like back when they were all together in middle school. Hyoku tells her that they all thought he was pretty much exactly like that too, right up until the point when he vanished and left everyone behind without a single word. Yoon then asks him directly whether he holds any kind of resentment toward Haemin for what happened, but Hyoku tells her that the reason he wanted to sit down and talk to them in the first place was more out of pure curiosity than anything else, and Yoon responds honestly by telling him that she is not entirely sure they are going to be able to give him the answers he is looking for, because they genuinely have no idea what is going on inside Haemin's head either. Yoon then suggests that the simplest thing to do would be to just pass Hyoku Haemin's number, and whether Haemin picks up the phone or calls back is going to be entirely his own decision to make. Yoon then asks Hyoku whether it is true that Haemin had a really severe case of the yips, going off of what the head coach had shared with them earlier. Hyoku confirms that it is completely true, and hearing that confirmation Yun sits back and thinks to herself that there is something about this whole picture that is just not adding up the way it should. She goes on to say that it is actually pretty common for players to quit because they are unable to overcome their mental blocks and fears, which is why she cannot understand why the team is being so harsh toward Haemin. According to her, they are acting as if he committed some terrible crime and ran away from everyone, especially with the way they keep chasing him down and suddenly appearing in front of him like that. Hearing this, Hyoku realizes that Yun believes Haemin's disappearance happened entirely because of the pressure and guilt he was carrying by himself. Yun then explains that if she had ruined an important game because of a mistake she made, she would probably end up suffering from trauma as well. However, Hyoku immediately clarifies that the team did not lose because of Haemin's mistake alone, and he firmly states that the real reason for their loss was simply that the team as a whole was not strong enough. He also points out that Haemin was never the only one suffering through the aftermath, because the entire team suffered together, struggled together, and believed they would eventually overcome everything together as a group. As the memory continues, it is revealed that on that day, the head coach directly asked Haemin whether he was able to play and whether he truly believed that they could win the game. Haemin confidently says that they are going to win, and Haemin just nods. The coach pulls Haemin aside and gives him a piece of advice, telling him that he needs to clear his head completely before he throws and just focus on going out there and winning without letting anything else get in the way. Once the coach makes his way back over to the other side, another coach approaches him and asks whether they are planning on switching Haemin out of the lineup, and the head coach tells him flat out that they are keeping things exactly the way they are. The other coach completely freaks out when he hears that and tells him that Haemin simply cannot handle this anymore because he is already visibly breaking down out there, and then it hits him that the head coach is only making this call because he is thinking about his own contract renewal and what it means for his future rather than what is actually best for Haemin. He gets even more heated and asks the head coach directly whether he is just planning to run Haemin into the ground until he completely breaks down, and the head coach tells him that is not what he wants at all. Deep down, the head coach thinks to himself that he understands better than just about anyone else in that stadium how absolutely terrifying the yips can be to deal with, because he went through the exact same thing himself at some point in his own career and knows what it does to a person from the inside. The head coach genuinely believes that Haemin has the kind of raw talent that does not come around very often, and that if he just keeps pushing through this rough patch he actually has a real shot at coming out on top and winning. The match keeps going, and things take a turn for the worse when Hyoku makes a run for the base but ends up injuring himself in the process. After everything settles down, Hyoku gets taken over to the doctor who comes back out and lets everyone know that he has been patched up properly and that thankfully the wound itself is not too deep, which is a relief for everyone standing around waiting to hear the news. However, Hyoku does not want to hear any of it and tells the coaches right away that he is perfectly fine and that he is going back out there to play regardless of what anyone has to say about it. The junior coach steps in and tells him that he might be feeling okay right now in this moment, but that the symptoms of a concussion have a way of showing up much later down the line when nobody is expecting them, and on top of that he could end up with a permanent scar on his face from the wound if he does not take it seriously and let it heal the right way. Hyoku is not having any of it and practically begs the coaches to let him back out there, insisting over and over again that he feels completely fine and that all he wants to do is play. The head coach jumps in and tells him seriously that if he just brushes this off and treats it like it is nothing worth worrying about, there is a real chance that he might never get to play baseball again, and that is not something anyone should be willing to gamble with. Hyoku sits with that for a moment before looking up and reminding the coach that he himself was the one who told all of them not to think of school baseball as just some stepping stone on the way to going pro, but to treat every single moment they get to play as something real and worth giving everything to. Hyoku then says with complete sincerity that he wants to play baseball more than anything right now, because he has never had as much fun or felt as genuinely thrilled during any game as he has during this one right here. After hearing all of that, the coaches look at each other and make the call to bring Hyoku back to the stadium, and when he walks back in everyone around is completely surprised to see him standing there ready to go. Haemin gets worried for him and says that he should go to the hospital because his injury could get worse and if he pushes himself then things are going to get worse. Haemin says that he can't even pitch himself and if he keep giving up runs they could lose and it would be his fault, but Hyoku says that it just means their team wasn't good enough this time and he shouldn't even be thinking about who to blame for the outcome. Hyoku also says that he doesn't plan on going down easy this game and he is going to make it hell for the other team. Back in the present, Changsik turns to Hyoku and asks him how that game ended up going, and Hyoku tells him plainly that they lost it. He also adds that at this point in his life it does not really matter to him anymore whether they win or lose, because that is just the reality of being in sports, and sometimes things go your way and sometimes they simply do not. Hyoko then goes on to mention that Haemin actually seemed to be doing completely fine about a month or so after the game wrapped up, but then out of nowhere he started skipping practice on a regular basis, and then right before a smaller and less significant game he just completely vanished. While the two of them are making their way back home after everything, Changsik turns to Yoon and asks her why she thinks Haemin just up and ditched everyone the way he did, and Yoon turns it over in her head and figures that it probably had something to do with what happened during that game. She also thinks to herself that if the yips were the kind of thing that could just be shaken off and overcome in the span of a single game, then it would never have gotten a name in the first place, which means there is a very real chance that something else entirely was going on with him underneath the surface that nobody around him fully understood. Meanwhile, on the complete other side of things, Haemin is sitting alone at a park quietly watching a group of kids go through their baseball practice from a distance without anyone noticing him there. After sitting with that for a while he gets up and heads out, and on his way he unexpectedly runs right into Aina. How long do you think it will take for Haemin to confront his past and finally get back in the water? Comment Haemin if you'd like a part 2 of this series. Make sure to like and subscribe the channel for more manhwa recaps.